Ernest Flynn's white cane clicks against marble, and every conversation in the executive lobby dies. 20 feet away, William Kirby whispers to security, "How did a blind man get past reception?" 3 hours from now, Kirby will discover that underestimating the invisible comes with a $500 million price tag. Before we continue this thrilling story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like this video and comment where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories, and trust me, you won't want to miss them. Now let's get into the story. The 47th floor of Kirby Capital Holdings gleams like a cathedral of glass and steel, each surface polished to mirror perfection. Eileen Cover moves through the executive boardroom with practiced silence, her microfiber cloth catching every fingerprint, every breath mark on the floor-to-ceiling windows that frame Manhattan's skyline. Miss a spot, and you'll be cleaning bathrooms until Christmas. William Kirby's voice cuts through the morning quiet like a blade. His blood-red Armani suit makes him look like spilled wine against the pristine white walls. He doesn't look at Eileen when he speaks, just through her, as if she's another piece of furniture to be arranged. "Yes, Mr. Kirby." Eileen's voice carries no emotion. 6 years of working these floors has taught her that invisibility is survival. Big day today, Eileen. Ernest Flynn himself is coming. The Ernest Flynn. Kirby adjusts his platinum cufflinks, admiring his reflection in the window. Forbes calls him the prophet of Wall Street. When a blind man can see opportunities everyone else misses, you pay attention. Eileen continues polishing, but her cloth pauses for just a heartbeat. She's heard that name whispered in executive hallways. The black investor who built an empire on instinct and intelligence, who could smell a bad deal from 3 time zones away. Make sure those contracts are pristine, Kirby continues. Flynn's reputation for detail is legendary. They say he can hear dishonesty in a man's breathing. In the hallway outside, Barbara Cover sits cross-legged against the wall, her mother's lunch bag balanced on her knees. At 14, she's learned to fold herself small in spaces where she doesn't belong. Her fingers trace patterns on her worn backpack, the same unconscious motion she makes when reading Braille, though no one here knows she's been studying it. The executive floor fascinates her. Men in $1,000 suits stride past discussing millions like pocket change. Women in designer heels click across marble, their voices sharp with authority. They live in a world where every decision shapes lives they'll never see, including her own. Kirby emerges from the boardroom, spots Barbara, and stops dead. What is this? His voice rises 3 octaves. This isn't a daycare center. Executive floors aren't for janitors' kids. The hallway falls silent. 2 lawyers pause their conversation. A secretary looks up from her phone. Everyone watches. Barbara shrinks smaller against the wall, but her eyes don't drop. Something in her steady gaze irritates Kirby further. Eileen. He barks toward the boardroom. Control your child. Eileen appears in the doorway, cloth still in hand, face flushed with humiliation. Barbara, baby, you need to wait downstairs. Some people, Barbara murmurs, just loud enough to carry, can only see what's above them. Kirby's face darkens. Excuse me. Nothing, sir. Eileen steps between them quickly. She was just leaving. But Barbara doesn't move. Something stubborn and bright in her expression suggests she's exactly where she needs to be. The elevator chimes. The doors slide open with mechanical precision, and Ernest Flynn steps onto the 47th floor. The laughter dies instantly. He's tall, elegant, moving with the quiet authority of a man who's never needed to raise his voice to command a room. His white cane sweeps in precise arcs across the marble. Dark sunglasses hide his eyes, but his posture suggests he sees everything that matters. The tailored navy suit probably costs more than Eileen makes in 6 months. His shoes are Italian leather, polished to mirror brightness. Everything about him speaks of power earned, not inherited. Kirby straightens his blood-red tie and approaches with his practiced smile. Mr. Flynn. William Kirby. Such an honor to finally meet. Ernest extends his hand toward the voice. Their handshake is brief, professional. Mr. Kirby. Thank you for accommodating my schedule. Of course, of course. Right this way. Kirby gestures toward the boardroom, then realizes the futility and simply says, "The conference room is straight ahead." As they walk, Kirby can't resist leaning close to his assistant and whispering, "He's blind? How does a man who can't see close a deal?" Ernest's steps don't falter, but his smile grows faint. "I see enough, Mr. Kirby." The words carry ice. Barbara watches from the hallway as the most powerful men in the building disappear into the boardroom. Something about Ernest Flynn's voice reminds her of her mother's. Strength wrapped in careful courtesy. Dignity maintained despite other people's assumptions. Inside the boardroom, Ernest takes his seat at the head of the polished table. His cane rests against his chair. The morning light streams through the windows Eileen just cleaned, casting long shadows across the contract documents spread before him. "Shall we begin?" Kirby's confidence has returned. This is his territory, his deal, his moment. The legal team arranges papers with theatrical precision. Market projections. Partnership structures. $500 million distilled into 43 pages of legal text. Kirby slides the signature page across the table with a flourish. "Just sign here, Mr. Flynn. I think you'll find our terms quite generous." Ernest's fingers hover over the page. His expression doesn't change, but something shifts in the room's atmosphere, like air pressure dropping before a storm. "I never sign what I can't read," he says quietly. The words hang in the air like a challenge. Kirby blinks. "I'm sorry. These contracts, Mr. Kirby. I'll need them in Braille before I can proceed." Silence stretches across the boardroom like a wire-pulled taut. The legal team exchanges glances. Kirby's smile freezes, then cracks. "Braille." He repeats the word like it's foreign. "Well, certainly we can. That is to say, how long would something like that?" Ernest sits perfectly still, his hands folded on the table, waiting. And no one, absolutely no one, knows how to help him. In the hallway, Barbara Cover presses her ear to the door and smiles. In the staff lounge 2 floors below, Barbara Cover sits at a scratched Formica table, her fingers moving across pages filled with raised dots. Her notebook looks like nothing special, just a composition book with strange bumps scattered across lined paper. But to Barbara, each cluster of dots tells a story. She pauses mid-sentence, her fingertip resting on a particularly complex word pattern. Through the thin walls, she can hear Elena, the floor supervisor, speaking rapidly into her radio. "We need emergency accessibility services. Braille translation. Financial documents. The client is, well, he's not happy." Barbara's hand stills completely. Her heart begins to race. How long for a certified translator? Elena's voice rises with panic. "Tomorrow. We don't have tomorrow. We don't have an hour." Something shifts inside Barbara, like a key turning in a lock she didn't know existed. She traces the dots under her fingertips and remembers the night everything changed. 3 years ago, emptying trash in the Grand Mont Hotel's executive suite, her mother had pulled out a thick book someone had discarded. The cover was worn leather, the pages filled with mysterious raised bumps. "What's this, Mama?" "Braille, baby. Books for people who can't see with their eyes." Barbara had stared at the patterns, fascinated. "Words don't need eyes," she'd whispered, running her small fingers across the dots. That night she'd taken the book home. While her mother slept between double shifts, Barbara traced each pattern by lamplight, matching dots to the printed alphabet guide glued inside the front cover. Hour after hour, night after night, until the bumps began to speak. Now, upstairs in the boardroom, the silence stretches like a taut wire. Ernest sits motionless at the head of the table, his hands folded with perfect composure. But Barbara can sense the tension radiating from the room above. 47 floors between them, yet she feels every uncomfortable shift in those executive chairs. "Mr. Flynn," Kirby's voice carries through the building's ventilation system, strained and false. "I'm sure we can arrange something. Perhaps we could reschedule when proper accommodations." "You had accessibility clauses in your proposal, Mr. Kirby." Ernest's tone sharpens like winter air. "Detailed provisions for inclusive business practices. Did you think I wouldn't notice when they weren't honored?" Barbara stands, her notebook clutched against her chest. The dots beneath her fingers seem to pulse with purpose. She moves toward the elevator, her mother's voice echoing in her memory. Some people can only see what's above them. But what about people who can't see at all? What about the words hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone who understands their secret language? The elevator ride feels eternal. Each floor brings her closer to a world that has never wanted her, never seen her as anything more than the cleaning lady's quiet daughter. The 47th floor is chaos contained behind glass walls. Through the boardroom windows, she can see Kirby pacing, lawyers whispering frantically, papers scattered across the polished table. And at the center of it all, Ernest Flynn sits with the patience of a man who has learned to wait for the world to catch up. Barbara approaches the boardroom door. Her reflection in the glass looks small, insignificant. A 14-year-old girl in second-hand clothes carrying a notebook that no one would understand. She knocks. Soft at first, then louder. The door swings open. Kirby fills the frame, his blood-red suit wrinkled now, his face flushed with frustration. When he sees her, his expression moves from annoyance to disbelief to something approaching rage. Are you kidding me right now? But Barbara's eyes move past him to Ernest Flynn, sitting perfectly still at the conference table. Her voice comes out smaller than she intended, but clear. I can read it to you, sir. If that's okay. The room goes silent. Even the city noise from beyond the windows seems to pause. Kirby scoffs, the sound sharp and dismissive. The cleaner's daughter? You can't be serious. This is a $500 million contract, not a middle school reading assignment. But Ernest turns toward her voice with the focused attention of a man who has learned to trust what others dismiss. His dark glasses reflect the afternoon light, but something in his posture suggests he sees exactly what he needs to see. Come here, child, he says quietly. Let's see what you can see. Barbara steps across the threshold, her notebook pressed against her racing heart, and enters a world that's about to discover what invisible really means. Barbara steps across the threshold, and the boardroom's marble floor feels like walking on ice. Every eye in the room follows her movement. Lawyers in $1,000 suits, executives with decades of experience, all watching a 14-year-old girl in second-hand jeans approach their sacred table. Barbara, no. Eileen's voice cuts through the silence from the doorway. Don't, baby. They'll humiliate you. Her mother's face is tight with fear, not for the deal, not for the powerful men, but for her daughter's heart about to be broken by people who crush dreams like discarded paper. Ernest tilts his head toward Eileen's voice, then back to Barbara. His smile is faint but genuine. Let her. The two words carry absolute authority. Even Kirby steps back. Barbara approaches the table where 43 pages of legal documents spread like a paper minefield. Her notebook feels small and inadequate in her hands, a child's practice sheets against contracts worth more than most people see in a lifetime. These aren't in Braille, sir, she says quietly. No, Ernest agrees. But you've been practicing, haven't you? Show me what you know. Barbara opens her notebook, pages filled with raised dots she's punched with a stylus night after night. Her fingers find familiar patterns. Legal terms she's been teaching herself. Financial vocabulary she's transcribed from library books about business law. She begins reading aloud from her practice sheets, translating the complex language into simpler terms. Partnership structures, profit-sharing arrangements, intellectual property transfers. As she speaks, the rhythm of the room changes. The frantic energy settles into something focused, attentive. Even the lawyers stop their whispered conferences to listen. Ernest nods slowly. Go on. Barbara's confidence grows with each translated phrase. Her finger moves across the dots with increasing speed, connecting unfamiliar legal jargon with Braille abbreviations she understands. The language begins to unlock itself, revealing patterns and meanings hidden beneath layers of corporate speak. Then she reaches a clause that makes her pause. Her finger stops mid-sentence. She reads it again more carefully. Sir. Her voice carries a note of concern. This section about patent control, it says you'd lose all rights to your technology innovations even if you provide the majority investment. The room goes dead silent. Kirby's face flushes crimson. She's mistaken. She doesn't understand complex legal terminology. But Ernest turns his head toward Kirby with laser focus. And yet she's the only one who can read this right now. The words land like a physical blow. Every person in that room. Harvard law degrees, decades of experience, million-dollar educations. And none of them can help the most powerful investor in the building access his own contract. Continue, Barbara, Ernest says calmly. Her finger finds another troubling passage. This clause here. It says if the partnership fails, you're liable for all development costs, but if it succeeds, your voting rights are limited to 15%. Kirby's jaw tightens. Mr. Flynn, surely you don't want to base crucial business decisions on a child's interpretation. A child, Ernest interrupts, his voice carrying ice, who is currently the only person in this room treating me with professional respect. The humiliation reverses like a tide turning. Barbara continues reading, her voice growing stronger with each revelation. Environmental impact clauses. They're buried in subsection 12, but they basically say you're responsible for any ecological damage, even from processes you don't control. Interesting, Ernest murmurs. What else? Employment guarantees. They promise to maintain current workforce, but there's an exception for operational efficiency restructuring that could mean anything. The silence in the room is deafening. Every revelation exposes not just contractual problems, but a fundamental truth. Ernest's blindness doesn't make him powerless. It exposes everyone else's inability to see what matters. For the first time since entering this gleaming tower of corporate power, the most vulnerable person in the room, a black cleaning lady's daughter who learned Braille from thrown-away books, holds all the cards. Ernest leans back in his chair, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Mr. Kirby, I believe we need to discuss some revisions. Barbara looks up from her notebook, dots of raised text under her fingertips, and realizes she's just changed everything. The girl who was invisible an hour ago now commands the attention of the most powerful room in the building. Shall I continue reading, sir? Ernest's nod is barely perceptible, but it carries the weight of a revolution. Please do, Barbara. I have a feeling you're just getting started. Shall I continue reading, sir? Ernest's nod is barely perceptible, but it carries the weight of a revolution. Please do, Barbara. I have a feeling you're just getting started. William Kirby's composure cracks like ice under pressure. His blood-red suit seems to darken as sweat beads along his hairline. This is completely irregular. You can't base a $500 million decision on a janitor's kid translating practice sheets. His voice rises with each word, desperation bleeding through his corporate polish. The lawyers shift uncomfortably. Even they recognize the sound of a man watching his carefully constructed trap collapse. Eileen stands frozen in the doorway, her cleaning cloth still clutched in white-knuckled fingers. Pride and terror war across her face as she watches her daughter navigate waters that could drown them both. Ernest tilts his head toward Kirby's voice, and his smile turns sharp as winter glass. Do you know why I don't fear blindness, Mr. Kirby? The question hangs in the air like a blade. Because I've spent my life surrounded by people who can see, yet understand nothing. The words slice through the boardroom's pretensions with surgical precision. Every executive feels the cut. Barbara's finger continues moving across her practice sheets, translating complex legal language with growing confidence. Each revelation builds her certainty that these contracts were designed to deceive. Sir, she says, her voice stronger now, there's something else. Section 27 has a clause about data transfer ownership. It says any proprietary algorithms you develop during the partnership automatically become joint property, but any losses from data breaches remain solely your responsibility. Ernest's smirk deepens. Thank you, Barbara. Most illuminating. He presses his palm flat against the polished table, and the gesture commands absolute attention. Every conversation stops. Every breath holds. Ms. Cover, he says formally, would you take dictation? Gasps ripple through the room like stones dropped in still water. Kirby lurches forward. Ernest, you can't be serious. She's not a legal secretary, she's a child. She's the most qualified person in this room. Ernest cuts him off. Barbara, if you would. Barbara opens her notebook to a fresh page, her stylus poised above the paper. Her heart hammers, but her hands remain steady. Ernest begins speaking, his voice carrying the authority of a man who has built empires on words alone. Revised Partnership Agreement, Nakamura Industries and Flynn Capital Holdings. Section 1. All intellectual property developed during this partnership remains with the originating party, with licensing fees negotiated separately. Barbara's stylus punches dots into paper with practiced precision, translating his words into the raised language only she can write. Section 2. Environmental impact responsibilities are shared proportionally based on ownership percentages, with mandatory third-party auditing quarterly. The lawyers scramble for pens, trying to keep pace with Ernest's dictation. But Barbara is already 3 sentences ahead, her Braille flowing faster than their printed notes. Section 3. Employment guarantees apply to all current workforce with no exceptions for restructuring unless mutually agreed upon by all parties. Kirby's face cycles through shades of red as he watches his predatory contract transformed into something fair, visionary, revolutionary. This isn't just business revision. It's complete reimagining. Section 4. Any party attempting to circumvent these terms through subsidiary clauses or hidden language forfeits all partnership benefits and pays damages equal to the full investment amount. Ernest pauses, his unseeing eyes somehow finding Kirby across the table. Are you getting all this, Mr. Kirby? The question carries acid sweetness. Barbara looks up from her notebook, dots of ink still wet under her fingertips. Should I continue, sir? For the first time, the executives in that room understand a fundamental truth. Ernest Flynn doesn't need sight. He has something far more dangerous, insight. And now he has Barbara Cover, a girl who can read the language of the overlooked and write the words that matter. The power dynamic hasn't just shifted. It's been completely rewritten, one raised dot at a time. Ernest leans back in his chair, his hands folded with perfect composure. Ms. Cover, I believe we're about to teach these gentlemen what it means to truly see. Barbara's smile matches his, sharp, knowing, and absolutely unstoppable. The cleaning lady's daughter has just become the most powerful person in the room, and everyone knows it. Ready when you are, sir. Ready when you are, sir. Ernest reaches across the polished table, his fingers searching the air with practiced precision. Barbara, guide my hand to where you've written. Barbara sets down her stylus and gently takes Ernest's hand in both of hers. His fingers are warm, steady, bearing calluses that speak of a man who built his fortune with more than just words. She guides his palm to the raised dots on her notebook page, placing his fingertips directly over her fresh Braille translation. Right here, sir. Section 1 starts at the top of the page. Together they read, his fingers following hers across the bumps and valleys of the new contract language. Her hand steady over his, teaching him the geography of words that will reshape a $500 million deal. The boardroom holds its breath. Every phone camera discreetly raised captures the moment that will later circle the globe. A blind black billionaire and a 14-year-old cleaning lady's daughter, hands intertwined over a notebook that rewrote the rules of power. Ernest's voice carries quiet satisfaction as he traces the final clause. Perfect, Ms. Cover. Absolutely perfect. He straightens, reaches into his jacket, and produces an elegant fountain pen, the kind that costs more than most people's monthly salary. Without hesitation, he guides it to the signature line on the original contract. But instead of his name, he writes in flowing script, contract void. See revised terms dictated to Barbara Cover, witnessed by all parties present. The pen scratches across expensive paper like a judge's gavel. William Kirby's face cycles through every shade of red in the spectrum. He lurches forward, desperation making his movements clumsy. This isn't binding. She's not qualified. She's not a legal secretary, not a certified translator, not. Neither, Ernest says, rising to his full height with the slow deliberation of a mountain forming, were your ethics. The words detonate in the silence. Every person in that room feels the shockwave. Kirby sputters, his corporate composure completely shattered. You can't destroy a partnership over a child's interpretation of. I'm not destroying anything, Mr. Kirby. Ernest's voice carries the calm of absolute certainty. I'm building something better. With someone who understands that trust isn't about what you can see, it's about what you choose to do when no one thinks you're watching. He turns toward Barbara, his dark glasses reflecting the afternoon light streaming through windows Eileen polished that morning. "Ms. Cover, I have a proposition for you." Barbara's heart stops. "Sir, would you consider a position as my personal accessibility consultant? Full salary, benefits, education fund. I have a feeling I'm going to need someone who can read between the lines." The offer hangs in the air like lightning about to strike. By the wall, Eileen Cover weeps silently. Tears of pride, terror, and overwhelming love stream down her cheeks as she watches her daughter. Her brilliant, invisible daughter who used to clean these same tables, now standing shoulder to shoulder with a billionaire who refused to look down on her. 6 years of emptying trash cans. 6 years of being looked through, stepped around, dismissed as furniture. And now her baby girl commands the attention of the most powerful room in the building. Barbara looks at her mother, then back at Ernest Flynn, then at the notebook in her hands filled with dots that changed everything. "Yes, sir," she says, her voice clear as crystal. "I accept." Ernest extends his hand toward her voice. Barbara takes it without hesitation, and their handshake seals more than just employment. It seals a revolution. Kirby stands speechless, his blood-red suit wrinkled, his carefully constructed deal lying in ruins. The lawyers gather their papers with the defeated shuffling of men who just watched their certainties crumble. But in the corner, Eileen Cover continues to weep. Because she knows what everyone else in that room is just beginning to understand. They didn't just witness a business transaction. They witnessed the moment when the invisible became impossible to ignore. And it all started with a girl who learned to read in a language that doesn't need eyes to see the truth. "Yes, sir. I accept." The handshake between Ernest Flynn and Barbara Cover reverberates through the boardroom like the final note of a symphony. Clear, definitive, and impossible to ignore. But Ernest isn't finished rewriting the rules. The boardroom has transformed from a cathedral of corporate dominance into something else entirely. A courtroom where justice wears dark glasses and speaks in raised dots. Ernest reaches into his briefcase and produces a leather portfolio embossed with his company seal. From it, he extracts a fresh contract. One written in both print and Braille, prepared by lawyers who understand that accessibility isn't accommodation, it's intelligence. "Mr. Kirby," Ernest says, his voice carrying the weight of mountains, "I'm prepared to invest my $500 million. But not in a purchase. In a partnership. Equality or nothing." He sets the new contract on the table with deliberate precision. The papers land with a sound like judgment falling. Kirby lunges forward, his composure completely shattered. "Ernest, you can't be serious. We've spent months negotiating terms. You can't throw away a deal this size over." "Over what, exactly?" Ernest's interruption cuts like surgical steel. "Over being treated with basic human dignity? Over having my requirements honored instead of ignored? Over finding the one person in this building who sees me as a human being instead of a disability with a bank account?" He questions hang in the air like accusations waiting for verdicts. Ernest turns his attention to Eileen, still weeping silently by the wall. His voice softens, carrying warmth that was absent moments before. "Mrs. Cover, I believe we haven't been properly introduced. I'm Ernest Flynn, and I'd like to offer you a position as facilities director for our new joint venture. Full benefits, signing bonus, and the respect you should have received years ago." Eileen's sob catches in her throat. "Sir, I don't understand. The only person who earned my trust in this building doesn't officially work here," Ernest explains. "That changes today. Both of you." Barbara clutches her notebook tighter, Braille dots still fresh under her fingertips. The language of the overlooked has just become the language of power. Kirby's face cycles through emotions like a broken traffic light. Red with rage, yellow with uncertainty, then a sickly green as realization dawns. His predatory contract lies abandoned on the table, worthless as yesterday's newspaper. This is completely unprecedented," Kirby stammers. "You can't restructure an entire partnership based on..." "Based on what?" Ernest's voice drops to a whisper that somehow fills the entire room. "Based on finding people who understand that character isn't something you can see with your eyes?" He stands slowly, his full height commanding the space like a monument to dignity. "Mr. Kirby, you had one job today. Treat me like the businessperson I am instead of the disability you assume defines me. You failed spectacularly." Ernest's unseeing gaze somehow finds Kirby across the table, pinning him in place with the cold precision of absolute judgment. Barbara Cover, at 14 years old, showed more professionalism in 30 minutes than your entire legal team managed in 6 months. She read your contract not just with her fingers, but with her conscience. She saw the traps you buried in subsections and the manipulations you hid in legalese. The silence stretches like a held breath. "My investment remains available, Mr. Kirby. But it comes with new terms. Barbara Cover as Chief Accessibility Officer, Eileen Cover as Facilities Director, and a complete revision of your company's approach to inclusive business practices." Ernest picks up his fountain pen and signs the new contract with flowing strokes. Each letter carved into paper becomes a commitment to something larger than profit. Equal partnership, Mr. Kirby. Or no partnership at all. Barbara steps forward, her voice clear as mountain air. "Mr. Kirby, would you like me to read you the revised terms? I promise I'll translate every word." The offer carries gentle mockery wrapped in professional courtesy. William Kirby stands silenced under Ernest's cold, unseeing gaze, his blood-red suit wrinkled and his certainties lying in ruins around his expensive shoes. The deal that was designed to exploit has been transformed into something revolutionary. A partnership built on respect instead of manipulation, guided by a girl who learned to read in darkness and a man who found light in unexpected places. The invisible have become impossible to ignore. And it all began with dots on a page that no one else bothered to learn. The deal that was designed to exploit has been transformed into something revolutionary. A partnership built on respect instead of manipulation, guided by a girl who learned to read in darkness and a man who found light in unexpected places. But revolutions need witnesses. Maria Santos from Business Weekly had arrived expecting a routine corporate photo op. Handshakes, forced smiles, the usual theater of high-stakes deals. Instead, she finds herself documenting something unprecedented. Her camera captures the moment that will define a generation. Barbara Cover, 14 years old in second-hand clothes, bent over her notebook with fierce concentration. Her fingers move across raised dots while Ernest Flynn leans beside her, his hand gently guiding hers across the Braille translation that rewrote corporate history. Behind them, Eileen Cover stands pressed against the wall, tears streaming down her face as she watches her invisible daughter command the attention of the most powerful room in Manhattan. And in the corner, William Kirby sits in his blood-red suit, staring at the ruins of his carefully constructed trap with the expression of a man who just watched his certainties crumble. Click. The camera flash illuminates more than faces. It captures the precise moment when the invisible became impossible to ignore. By morning, the image has circled the globe. Cleaner's daughter writes in Braille, secures $500 million deal, blazes across newspaper headlines from New York to Tokyo. The photograph, Barbara's steady hand over Ernest's, both of them bent over a notebook that changed everything, becomes the most shared image of the year. Good Morning America opens with the story. Robin Roberts holds up the photograph, her voice warm with admiration. This is 14-year-old Barbara Cover, who proved that real vision has nothing to do with sight and everything to do with seeing people for who they truly are. The View dedicates an entire segment to what they call the Barbara effect. Whoopi Goldberg leans into the camera. This child didn't just read Braille. She read the room, read the situation, and read between the lines better than lawyers with decades of experience. Social media explodes. Students share Barbara's image with captions that become rallying cries. She didn't have to see to understand. Braille is beautiful. The overlooked are watching. TikTok creators make videos teaching basic Braille patterns. Hashtagging #BarbaraChallenge. Libraries report unprecedented demand for Braille learning materials. Sign language classes fill waiting lists months long. The image appears on magazine covers, editorial cartoons, and classroom walls. Art students create interpretations showing dots of light piercing corporate darkness. Musicians write songs about fingers reading truth. But it's Ernest Flynn's words to 60 Minutes that crystallize the moment's meaning. People keep asking me how a 14-year-old girl could understand a complex contract better than trained professionals. The answer is simple. She read the truth others couldn't see. She didn't just translate words, she translated intention, character, integrity. He pauses, his dark glasses reflecting the camera lights. Barbara Cover has real vision. Not the kind that depends on eyes, but the kind that depends on conscience. She saw what mattered when everyone else was blinded by what they thought they knew. The interviewer leans forward. What does this mean for corporate America? Ernest's smile is sharp as winter. It means the days of invisible people are over. Barbara proved that the most important voices often come from the places no one thinks to look. Boardrooms across the country are about to discover what happens when you start listening to people you've spent years ignoring. The segment ends with the photograph again. Barbara and Ernest, hand over hand, rewriting the rules with raised dots that spoke louder than any corporate manifesto. Within weeks, Barbara Cover becomes more than a symbol. She becomes a revolution. Companies scramble to hire accessibility consultants. Business schools add courses on inclusive leadership. The phrase Barbara Cover moment enters corporate vocabulary, meaning the instant when overlooked wisdom exposes institutional blindness. But in the quiet moments between interviews and photo shoots, Barbara still sits in staff lounges with her practice notebooks, her fingers moving across dots that transformed her from invisible to impossible to ignore. The girl who learned to read in a language that doesn't need eyes taught the world that real sight has nothing to do with vision and everything to do with seeing people for who they truly are. The camera flash that captured her moment of triumph continues to illuminate corporate boardrooms, classrooms, and hearts across the globe. One photograph, one girl, one language of raised dots, and suddenly everywhere people are learning to see. One photograph, one girl, one language of raised dots, and suddenly everywhere people are learning to see. But Barbara Cover isn't finished rewriting the world. 3 weeks after the photograph circled the globe, Ernest Flynn stands outside a modest apartment building in Queens, his white cane tapping against cracked sidewalk. The contrast couldn't be starker, from Manhattan's gleaming towers to peeling paint and fire escapes, yet he navigates both worlds with equal grace. Barbara opens the door before he knocks, her smile bright as morning light. "Mr. Flynn, we weren't expecting you. I hope you don't mind the intrusion, Ms. Cover. I have something to discuss with you and your mother." Eileen appears in the doorway, still adjusting to being called Director Cover at work, still amazed that her daughter's fingertips changed their entire world. Their apartment tells a story in every corner. The walls are lined with books, some in Braille, others in print, many dog-eared from library sales. Barbara's practice notebooks cover the kitchen table in neat stacks, each one filled with raised dots that document her journey from invisible to impossible to ignore. Ernest settles into their small living room, his presence somehow making the cramped space feel dignified rather than diminished. "I've been thinking," he begins, "about foundations. Not the concrete kind that hold up buildings, but the human kind that hold up dreams." Barbara perches on the edge of the couch, her latest notebook in her lap. "What do you mean, sir?" "The Flynn Cover Initiative." His words carry the weight of announcement. A foundation dedicated to funding Braille education and accessibility programs for underprivileged children. Kids like you, Barbara, who have extraordinary potential but limited resources. Eileen's hands flutter to her chest. "Sir, we can't let you name it after us." "Mrs. Cover," Ernest interrupts gently, "Barbara didn't just help me read a contract. She helped an entire generation see what they've been missing. Her name belongs on something that will outlast all of us." He turns toward Barbara's voice. "Your fingertips see what most eyes miss, Barbara. Use them well. The foundation will provide Braille training, technology, scholarships, everything necessary to ensure no child with vision impairment goes without the tools to succeed." Barbara traces patterns on her notebook cover, the same unconscious motion she makes when thinking deeply. What about children who aren't blind but need other kinds of help? Kids who are overlooked for different reasons? Ernest's smile spreads slowly. "Exactly what I was hoping you'd ask. The foundation serves anyone society renders invisible. Deaf children needing sign language resources, immigrant kids requiring translation services, students with learning differences who think in ways others don't understand. The apartment falls quiet except for the distant hum of city life beyond their windows. Barbara's first paycheck arrives that afternoon. More money than she's ever seen, properly made out to Barbara Cover, Chief Accessibility Officer. She holds the paper like it might dissolve, running her fingers across the raised lettering of her official title. She doesn't cash it. Instead, she frames it. That evening, sitting at their kitchen table surrounded by Braille notebooks and foundation planning documents, Barbara tells her mother something that will echo through both their lives. "We'll build something with this, Mama. Not just for us, but for people like Mr. Flynn. For everyone who's been told they can't because others refuse to see they can." Eileen looks at her daughter, this impossible child who learned to read in darkness and taught the world to see, and understands that their small apartment has become the birthplace of something magnificent. Through their window, the lights of Manhattan glitter like distant stars. Each one represents lives that will be touched by a foundation born from fingertips that read truth and a heart that refuse to accept invisibility. Barbara opens her newest notebook, her stylus poised above blank paper. The first dots she punches spell out, "The Foundation of Sight, Mission Statement." Her fingers move with practiced precision, creating raised words that will guide programs, policies, and possibilities for generations of overlooked children. Outside, the city hums with 8 million stories. But tonight, in a modest apartment in Queens, a 14-year-old girl continues writing the one that will matter most. One dot at a time. One dot at a time. 1 year later, the bronze plaque gleams outside the 47th floor boardroom of what is now Flynn Kirby Capital Holdings, its raised lettering catching afternoon light. "In this room, Ernest Flynn and Barbara Cover taught us to read with our hearts, not our eyes." The same conference table where Barbara once trembled now serves as her weekly classroom. Every Thursday at 3 p.m., Ernest arrives with leather portfolios filled with case studies, ethical dilemmas, and cutting-edge accessibility technology that's transforming how business gets done. "Ethics isn't a course you take, Barbara," Ernest explains, his fingers tracing Braille documents she's prepared for their session. "It's a muscle you strengthen every time you choose integrity over convenience." Barbara, now 15 and officially enrolled in Columbia's business program through early admission, takes notes in rapid Braille shorthand. Her stylus moves with the confidence of someone who's learned that intelligence comes in many languages. "The Nakamura deal closed last month," she reports. "Their new AI translation software includes 23 accessibility features we suggested. They're calling it the Barbara Protocol." Ernest's smile carries pride that radiates beyond vision. "How does it feel to have technology named after you?" "Weird," Barbara admits. "But good weird. Like maybe all those nights practicing dots by lamplight actually mattered." 2 floors up, Eileen Cover, now Director of Staff Development, leads a training session for new executives. The woman who once moved invisibly through these halls now shapes how the company treats every employee, from janitors to board members. "Respect isn't about titles," she tells the room full of MBA graduates. "It's about seeing potential in places others refuse to look." The cautionary tale of William Kirby's downfall has become corporate legend. Harvard Business Review featured his story under the headline, "When Prejudice Cost a Company $500 million." He's now a middle manager at a firm in Newark, his blood-red suits replaced by off-the-rack gray. But the real victory isn't his fall. It's what rose in its place. This Thursday afternoon, Barbara notices a small figure hovering outside the boardroom. Miguel Santos, 12 years old, son of the night custodial supervisor. His eyes dart between the gleaming conference room and Barbara's notebook covered in mysterious dots. "Excuse me," he whispers. "Are you the girl who can read with her fingers?" Barbara remembers another hallway, another powerful man's dismissal, another moment when courage had to overcome fear. "I am. Would you like to learn?" Miguel's nod is eager, tentative. "My little sister was born blind. I want to help her, but I don't know how." Barbara opens her notebook to a fresh page, gestures to the chair beside her. "Let's start with her name. What's she called?" "Isabella." Barbara's stylus punches dots into paper with practiced precision. "Feel this," she says, guiding Miguel's fingertip to the raised pattern. That's how you write Isabella in Braille. Miguel's face transforms as understanding dawns. She could read this. She could read anything, Barbara confirms. Stories, homework, love letters when she's older. Braille isn't limitation, it's liberation. Ernest listens from across the table, his enhanced hearing catching every word of the lesson unfolding beside him. His voice carries soft satisfaction. Vision isn't about what you see, Barbara. It's about what you choose to notice. Barbara looks up from teaching Miguel, her fingers still resting on the dots that spell his sister's name. Around them, the boardroom that once rejected her now welcomes a new generation of overlooked children. And we choose to notice everyone, she says, her voice carrying the certainty of someone who's learned that the most powerful language doesn't need eyes to change the world. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan sprawls in all directions. 8 million stories of struggle, triumph, and possibility. But in this room where prejudice once reigned, 3 generations now sit together. Ernest Flynn, whose blindness became his strength. Barbara Cover, whose fingertips read truth. And Miguel Santos, whose love for his sister just opened doors to a future none of them can fully see but all of them choose to build. Miguel's finger traces the dots spelling Isabella, with wonder that borders on reverence. Will you teach me more? Barbara opens her notebook wider, makes space at the table. Every Thursday at 3. Bring Isabella when she's ready. The afternoon sun streams through windows Eileen once cleaned, illuminating a legacy written in raised dots and measured not in dollars but in lives transformed. 1 dot at a time. 1 child at a time. 1 choice to notice at a time. Fade out.